It's a great pleasure and honour to talk to you.
Look, thank you so much, Lex. And it's actually 9 Walkleys.
9 Walkleys. Oh, I'm going to have to do some investigation into how this arose.
Don't want to undersell.
No. It's a mere 9 Walkleys now. By the end of this interview, it'll probably be up to 10 or 11, I would imagine. Kate, the thing that intrigues me, and I have to say, at what point does your investigative journalism become when you have to balance up exposing corruption to exposing your family to threats? When does it become reckless?
Oh, dear. I'm glad my children aren't here listening to this interview because, you know what, it's funny. As you get older, it's far more liberating when your children are themselves young adults. But when they were little, I used to make them come along with me to do stakeouts. I remember once there was a big mafia meeting happening at a restaurant, and I made my children and my reluctant sister-in-law and her children to come along. And I said, don't worry, they'll never suspect families having pizza. And I got one of my young children. I said, you go over there, you take photos of them. They won't suspect you.
Oh, no. Does Docs know about this?
A family that does stakeouts together, you know, sticks together.
That's right.
There was a couple of times when I had death threats either delivered to my house, or on one occasion I had the police call and say, look, there's been a credible threat and you need to get your family out of the house. And I remember going to the Herald and saying, oh, God, look, this terrible thing's happened. You know, we've got to move out of the house. And I said, you know, look, can we go to the local Medina apartments? And they said, no, too expensive. And I said, oh, okay, well, what about, you know, some other place? No, not in the budget. So the Herald ended up putting us in this terrible a city apartment next to the cinemas in George Street. And I lasted one night and I thought, you know what, I'd actually rather die. So I think then they just got security to stand outside our house. But it does, I always think back, no, not in the budget.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. It's been an amazing career, Kate. What led you to journalism in the first place?
Look, like a lot of things in life, completely by accident. So at university, I was studying arts law, and then I did an honours degree in the great love of my life, which is English literature. And I thought I'd just take a break from the law, and I got a job in a publishing company. And it was completely dire because we were doing an encyclopedia of Australia and New Zealand. And I think in the 18 months that I was there, we got as far as C. So I typed my name into the Nobel Prize winners and quit. But sadly, they did have sub-editors who picked up that Kate McClymont was not a Nobel Prize winner.
Not yet.
And look, it was funnily, you know, I was at a party and I was chatting to somebody I just met who said, oh, I've just got a cadetship at the Sydney Morning Herald. And it was like a light bulb going off, and I thought, you know what, that's actually what I would like to do. So the following year, you know, I rang her up and I got tips about how to go about it, what they were looking for, etc. But the strange thing was that I think the only reason I got the job was that the people interviewing me were most interested in the fact that I had a busking booth.
Yes.
Yes, and the busking booth was questions answered 40 cents, arguments 50 cents, and verbal abuse $1. And I used to make about $17 an hour, which, you know, this is 40 years ago, and that was, you know, really quite good money. So I think that they thought, well, if you can do that, because I don't have any other talents, unlike you, I have no artistic talent at all, but, you know, I can talk. So it wasn't my honours degree, it wasn't, and I'd also been working in community radio and I'd been doing work at local newspapers. It wasn't those things. I think it was my busking booth.
Kate, before we go back and get nostalgic about the early days, just one final thing on your brand of journalism. How do you find a story? Have you got a sixth sense that that you think there's something fishy here, there's something worth digging a bit deeper? Did the stories, does your antennae work?
Look, I think it, like a lot of people, it's really the sniff test or the pub test. But it's funny how stories come to you. I've got, fantastic stories out walking the dog where I've just got talking to somebody. Or one of my favourite stories, I know you mentioned earlier about Michael Williamson, the head of the Health Services Union, who ended up going to jail for 5 years as well. So how I got onto that story was a member of the public rang up and said, "You should look at this person, Michael Williamson." And I said, "Look, forgive my ignorance, but who's he?" And they said, "Well, he's actually the head of the Health Services Union and he's the national president of the ALP." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, we're parents at the same school. And as a union official, he and his wife have got 5 children at private schools." I'm doing the maths here thinking, oh, gee, 5 children at private schools. He and his wife, who didn't work, were driving top of the range Mercedes Benzes. But what really got my informant on the phone was that the Williamsons constantly outbid all the other parents at the school charity auctions. So to him, that was the clinch. And so that's, I thought, well, I mean, and that is as good a reason as any to have a look at somebody.